Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, January 31st, 2013. And I want to start out with a little prayer request, two actually. One is for the people in Spain and Greece and other nations in Europe that are suffering. I just had an email from a friend of mine in Spain, and she told me that unemployment there is almost 10 million people. We're talking about a country with approximately 50 million people. That's 20% unemployment, which is just absurd. So prayers, please, for the people in Spain and other places in Europe. And I would appreciate, if you're the praying sort, some prayers for myself, and also Georgianne. Her eye surgery is next week. And if you're not the praying sort, then think good thoughts for us. I had some rather heavy news yesterday, and it's a long-term situation that isn't too good. Anyway, speaking of long-term situations that aren't too good, I ran into this little article at Zero Hedge. Just appeared today, and it is in turn referencing an article that appeared on the 29th, and it is entitled, China Just Threatened a Currency War If the Fed Doesn't Stop Printing. And it states this, quote, the tension between central banks that we noted yesterday continues to worsen. This time, it was China and the EU, not just Germany, that fired the warning shots at the U.S. Federal Reserve. A senior Chinese official said Friday that the United States should cut back on printing money to stimulate its economy if the world is to have confidence in the dollar. Asked whether he was worried about the dollar, the chairman of China's sovereign wealth fund, the China Investment Corporation, Jin Li-kun, told the World Economic Forum in Davos, I am a little bit worried. There will be no winners in currency wars, but it is important for a central bank that the money goes to the right place, Li said. Speaking at the same session, French Finance Minister Pierre Moscovici voiced concern that the euro was becoming overvalued as a result of the quantitative easing and other stimulus actions taken by other nations' central banks. Certainly, the level of the euro is high and creates some problem, he said, attributing the single currency's recent gains partly to the return of confidence created by the European Central Bank and Eurozone governments in starting to overcome Europe's debt crisis. And that ends the quotation session. Now, this is actually Zero Hedge and their comment. So first, Germany begins pulling its gold reserves from the U.S. And now China and the EU are saying publicly that the Fed's policies are damaging confidence in the US dollar. Now stop right there. You recall that I've been stating here in these blogs and on my website that if this trend continues, the next thing to look for would be some sort of indication that there was backing of Germany for this action from some other great power. And now notice it's coming at Davos from China and from France. Now, this is very interesting to me because the Bank of France is one of the central banks that Germany requested a repatriation of its gold from. So this means now, my friends, even though Zero Hedge is taking a suitably low tone, this means something very significant. There is a financial geopolitical realignment taking place, and it could happen if the Fed doesn't listen to these central banks. What is happening is they've lost confidence in the dollar. Now, one of the things I want to bring back to your attention is that this is only part of the story. The other part of the story, I'm convinced, lays in the bearer bond scandals, all those billions and trillions of dollars of supposedly counterfeit gold-backed bearer bonds. issued by the New York Federal Reserve in 1934, supposedly. All right. To me, these so-called counterfeits are an indicator that there is such a hidden system, because you don't counterfeit what doesn't exist. It's a message that there's been something going on for quite a long time, and it concerns a hidden system of finance and a lot of gold. All right. Now, that gold, as I've argued in my most recent book, Covert Wars and Breakaway Civilizations, has been rehypothecated many times over. Now, we will be told in public by various financial experts and so on that these gold bars in central banks are stamped with specific serial numbers and earmarked to one nation and only for certain purposes. All right, but my friends, it's an old banking trick dating back to the Middle Ages. You cull and you clip coins. All right, and you also deal in bad faith, quite literally, by diluting the purity of the bullion if you're having to surrender it to somebody else. All right. And the final thing you do is you simply melt down the gold, particularly of a competitor's coins, and recast it as your own. So in other words, there's nothing to prevent these central banks, if they have lost confidence in these central banks. The reason why, I submit to you, is really because they suspect that that gold has been melted down and rehypothecated to some other use. So they're calling in the end to this hidden system of finance. And the reason why, I suspect, is they sense that recent history, the last 10 to 20 years of American foreign policy, is just run amok. All right. So all of this is tied to their perceptions of the ruling oligarchies in London, and more particularly in America. So I suspect more is going on here, folks, than just a lack of confidence in the credibility of the dollar. What you're really witnessing here is a response to that hidden system of finance, and they're putting an end to it. And number two, it's a response to what can only be seen, I think, if you are in Europe or in Asia, as an increasingly reckless and unilateral American foreign policy. And they're simply not going to go along with a dictatus Americani. All right, that's the bottom line here. So currency is now the fulcrum or the wedge by which all of these other issues are entering into the picture. They will gradually start to come out. So in other words, I'm making a prediction as these financial aspects of the current situation increasingly become more vociferous. You're also going to start seeing similar messages from these countries, maybe beginning in Germany, maybe beginning in France, maybe Italy, a similar message coming out about American policy, foreign policy, American unipolarity, American unilateralism, and so on and so forth. And the fact that it will be coming not so much from China or Russia, but from Europe, will be very significant. That will be more difficult to ignore or to shut off as a kind of typically Russian or Chinese response. All right. So watch for these political developments. Now, there's one final thing that I want to mention in this regard to what's going on financially. And I'm going to link it to this video, and I'm going to link it on the website version of the video. Recently, a conference was held in Santa Monica that was given by a new corporation that was formed. It's called Deep Space Inc. All right. The corporation was formed specifically for the purpose to develop technologies to mine asteroids. All right. Now, in Covert Wars and Breakaway Civilizations, I suggested a rather interesting novel idea. It's pure speculation, folks, don't get me wrong. But that part of this hidden system of finance was for the express purpose not only of providing a secret political slush fund for covert activities, but more importantly, a large supply of completely off the books money. In other words, the government had really no oversight over this money at all. for black projects in secret technological development. And the collateral for the development of these technologies were the resources that lay completely off this planet. All right. So in other words, you have, as one of my friends observed recently in one of our discussions in the members area of the website, he observed that you had an oligarchy in the Middle Ages, namely the Templars, that had two things. They were a private, so to speak, religious order, a corporation, heavily involved in international banking. And the other thing they had was a fleet, all right? And the third thing they had was secret knowledge. Now, in the Financial Vipers of Venice, the book coming out sometime this year, I argue that this knowledge was what fueled the exploration of the New World. But I'm going to suggest to you the hypothesis that my friend came to, and I came to this, and David Hatcher, Childress, and other researchers have come to this conclusion as well, that the Templars actually explored North America 1 to 2 to perhaps even as much as 3 centuries before the original voyages of discovery. I should say 250, not 300 years. What this means is that the medieval model is perhaps what is part of the hidden story about what's been going on with this secret finance, secret space programs, and so on. They're now slowly beginning to talk about the possibility of resource development off-world. This means, my friends, that the other thing to look for as a long-term trend over the next 5 to 10 years is precisely the commercialization of deep space. And I strongly suspect that this might be the game changer in terms of the current economic situation. What do you do when you get into, as I discussed in Babylon's Banksters, when you get into that period of maximum growth, when that growth curve begins to flatten out? Well, you open up the bottle. You open up the system again. And the way to open up that system physically, in terms of where the world economy is now, is in deep space. So a lot going on, folks, right now. We are in that big era of transition. It's not going to look the same when it's done. Certainly, I probably won't live to see the end of it, but certainly our children and grandchildren will. So these are things to look for. Increasing discussion in Europe of American unilateralism that will be coupled with an emphasis on American financial responsibility to the rest of the world. That will subsequently be joined perhaps by more calls against American unilateralism coming from Russia and China and so on and so forth. In other words, look for all these signals and look for that deep space meme to begin quietly to circulate a little bit more broadly. Anyway, more high-octane speculation here with news and views from the Nefarium. Keep it right here, folks. I appreciate your prayers. I appreciate your donations and all the good wishes and emails that you all send me. We'll see you on the flip side, everybody, and God bless.